What is consciousness? And what does it mean to truly live life awake? Welcome to Clarity to Consciousness, a podcast where we transcend beyond stereotypes, embracing a deeper understanding. I'm your host, Kristen Griffiths, a fellow seeker on this path. Join me on a journey as we dive into conversations with experts, unraveling stigmas, and expanding our awareness to something profound. This is your invitation to open your mind with me as together we bring clarity to the fascinating complexities of human consciousness. Welcome back to Clarity to Consciousness. I'm your host, Kristen Leigh Griffiths, and today's episode marks the start of something really important. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're kicking things off with a powerful conversation and an opportunity to give back. My guest today is Justin LaPree, the visionary founder and president of the Illuminating Collective, or TICo for short, a pioneering nonprofit devoted to healing, transformation, and purposeful living through community, connection, and ancestral medicine ceremonies. Justin is a decorated Marine, a former Austin firefighter, and a seasoned entrepreneur whose life has been shaped by service, resilience, and an unwavering commitment to turning trauma into purpose. His work through TICo includes the creation of Illuminating Heroes, an entheogenic sanctuary offering sacred space for deep healing and spiritual growth, and Illuminating Souls, a transformative program that supports all individuals seeking continued growth, connection, and expansion. And together, these offerings reflect his mission to create accessible, intentional paths to healing and wholeness. As a respected facilitator and medicine carrier, Justin merges ancient wisdom with modern science to guide individuals on truly transformational paths right here in the U.S. And his work is grounded in reverence and protected by religious freedom laws, offering deeply sacred and accessible experiences for healing. If something in today's conversation resonates with you or you're moved by Justin's mission, please consider supporting the Illuminating Co. with a donation. And you'll find the link in the show notes, or you can visit theilluminating.co. Now let's dive in. Justin, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen, and thank you for all the listeners today.
Yeah, absolutely. Your story is incredibly powerful, and we will link the video that you have about your story for everyone to watch in the show notes. But for the sake of the listener who's just getting to know you now, can you share some of your story with us?
Yes, absolutely. I grew up in Katy, Texas, just outside of Houston. Went to private school the majority of my life outside of just my senior year of high school. I went to a public school. My parents were just separating, about to go through a divorce. Grew up in the Catholic Church, did all the things, was a Boy Scout and was an altar boy, and really had a lot of abuse at home. My father at that time was an alcoholic, was verbally, emotionally, and physically abusive to those in the household, which really didn't have a safe space to grow up in. And I must say that I'm grateful for those experiences. I'm not here to shame anybody in my family. I'm grateful for those because it made me who I am today, and really taught me resilience at a very young age. So in 2000, I graduated high school, and I joined the military. It was basically about 9 months after I graduated. I wanted to find a family. I really wanted to find a community, and I went through to every single recruiter's office, and I had come to the conclusion that the Marine Corps was going to be the hardest for me. And the most challenging, so that's the one I chose. So I got out of infantry school September 7th of 2001. The towers fell, and we deployed in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and then the Battle of Fallujah in 2004. I came home and got out of the military, lost a lot of friends over there, suffered a mild traumatic brain injury, and came back with the veteran narrative that you hear all too often: PTS, anxiety, depression, night terrors, insomnia, you name it, we had it, and we were experiencing it. And we were misunderstood. Nobody really knew how to help us. Nobody really understood what we needed. And, the course of action was to go into the VA system. As we know, the system has its challenges, and we were given a toxic cocktail of pharmaceutical pills. Some of those pills included Oxycontin. This is back in the early 2000s, so 2005.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know the history of Oxycontin from the Sackler family, so this is really where Oxycontin was coming into use in the early 2000s. To be honest, I had as many as I could take. I never ran out. And I started to abuse them. I didn't want to feel my pain. I didn't want to feel my emotions. I grew up into a household that men didn't cry. I grew up in a household that men didn't share their feelings. And that was even more the same in the military, right? Us as Marines did not share our feelings with each other. Us as Marines did not cry. Us as Marines did not show emotion. And, you know, the military does a really good job at teaching you how to kill another human, right? It's not something that we really, if you didn't serve, that you really can relate to what that must be like to kill another you. But I can tell you firsthand that it got real for me when I took my first life, and it's not a video game. And you know, killing another human. You know, I've always thought. Well, not always. Over the last decade, I've started to think more and more about those individuals that I had to kill. If I would have met them in another situation at another point in time in another life, would we have been friends? Would we have had a good conversation like what we're having today? You know, in reality, they were doing the same thing we were doing. We were invading their country. If somebody were to invade our country, I can promise you that I'd take every weapon out of this house and fight for what I'm keeping sacred.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't blame them. Right?
Yeah.
At the time, we were very angry. And when your friends die, you're even more angry and you just want retribution. And, you know, a lot of us came home with moral injury, something that they also don't talk about. You know, us growing up in the church, thou shalt not kill, or you're going to hell. Mm-hmm. How do you unpack that?
Right.
How do you, I guess that's my destiny because I had to kill.
Yeah.
To save the life of myself and my fellow brothers. So with that being said, I became an addict. I was on a ton of medications, SSRIs, anti-anxiety, Adderall for concentration, Ambien because I couldn't sleep. No wonder.
Yeah.
And then you throw alcohol in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
And well, I couldn't land a job. It was really interesting to me that I had done so much at such a young age, and I led Marines into the fiercest urban combat that we've seen since Vietnam. And I came home and I couldn't even help myself, and I became homeless. I was living up in New York at the time. I had started dating a woman up there, and that didn't last too long, but I stayed. And part of me staying was I was homeless and I couldn't afford to get an apartment. For the listeners out there, so expensive up in New York. But I had so much pride that I didn't want to come back home and I didn't want to ask for help. And I had a lot of shame about that. So I was going to figure it out. Kind of that resiliency that I was taught as a boy. And so I moved into a halfway house and, you know, got off the streets, which was nice. Got connected with the Wounded Warrior Project, which was the largest veteran nonprofit at the time. And I started to meet other people that had very similar stories to me. And I met an individual, Bob Cheeseman. God bless him. I get emotional every time I talk about this because, you know, Bob saw something in me that I didn't see in myself and gave me an opportunity to interview for a position in his department at Citigroup, which is an investment bank on Wall Street. Didn't have a pot to piss in, didn't have a suit, didn't know how to write a resume. You know, the military doesn't teach you any of this stuff. It's like, man, they teach you how to be a killer, but they don't teach you how to live life and go back into society. Hopefully they are now, but I tell you what, back in 2005, they were not. And I didn't know how to do all of that. And Wounded Warrior Project took me to Joseph A. Bank. It was, you know, like 3 suits for $49 type of sale, right? It was great.
They always have those special.
You know what I'm talking? Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. There's like a whole SNL skit about it. It was hilarious.
It's great. It's like I was kitted out. And I felt proud. And that's what I really needed. I needed to feel pride again. It's something that I hadn't felt for a couple of years. And well, I got the job. I worked for him for 4 years. I moved over to Brownstone Investment Group, which was a broker dealer. And so my total time in finance was about 9 years. I was still self-medicating. You know, that Wall Street mentality, that Wall Street lifestyle was definitely not healthy for me. It was more of the same, just different substances. A lot of entertaining. Not saying it wasn't fun in my early 20s, but it definitely wasn't helping me grow. So I left finance. I came back to Texas and became an Austin firefighter. I really wanted to get back to service. Really something that I've always been called to is serving. And I'm here to tell you that being a firefighter exposed me to traumatic events that like I have never seen before. It was much, much more intimate, experiencing somebody's worst day as just like a pure soul, as somebody who's just going about their day. They wake up in the morning, they have their coffee, and they have a heart attack in front of their family, or the child drowns in a pool, or someone hangs themselves, or someone takes their own life, or somebody ODs, and we're the first ones on scene. I mean, absolute front row ticket to human suffering like I've never seen it before. And man, it shook me to the core. And once again, the mentality, at least at my department at the time, was suck it up, push it down, drink it away, right? And damn, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal. Am I grateful for the experience? Absolutely. Some of the best years of my life. Incredible, brotherhood. Everybody's very mission focused. So I was very romantic with that idea about, being with other people that are really, mission focused to achieve the outcome. And we were very, very good at what we did. But it came at a cost. And this is why divorce rates are so high with first responders. This is why, there's so many alcoholics because alcohol is legal, right? And it's our coping mechanisms. 2018, in the fall of 2018, I had enough. I was in a very dark place again. I was still on all my pharmaceuticals. I was drinking very heavily. My divorce had started. And although the divorce was a good thing, so my children did not have to grow up in a very similar household that I did, divorce is very toxic. And I didn't know what I was getting into when the divorce started. And then you have to keep going to court. And the lawyers are really just playing off of everybody and putting everybody against each other. And it's a very sinister, scenario to have to experience. And so I really felt like I was burdening my children. My children were 4 and 1 at the time. And I didn't know how to be a dad. I didn't know how to be really anything. And I didn't want to live anymore. And so I attempted to kill myself. I was unsuccessful by the grace of God, a true miracle that I'm still here today. And after that suicide attempt, I took some time off and I read a book, How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. If anybody's struggling out there, I encourage you to read that book in your library. And I read that book, and Michael Pollan speaks about the ability of being able to rewire your mind, transcend trauma with the use of natural medicines. And I'm like, well, nothing else is working for me. So let's give this a shot. If it doesn't work, then I'm going to kill myself and I'll be successful the second time. If it does work, then my daughter will be able to have her father walk her down the aisle, and my son will be able to have his father teach him how to throw a baseball. And so I felt that it was worth that opportunity for my children to take the chance just to see if this would work. And well, it did. And I started to work with medicines, mushrooms to start in 2019. I remember that first ceremony I facilitated I was very scared. I was doing a lot of research in a very short amount of time, and I downloaded the Johns Hopkins playlist. They had just started all the clinical trials on mushrooms, and they were starting to really look at the effects of psilocybin mushrooms on the brain. And I had tapered off my medications, so I was going into the ceremony for the first time since 2005, so 14 years off of all prescriptions. I was feeling everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I was so numb. I was so numb up to that point because I was taking so many things that were just treating the symptom, right? Just treating the symptom of, oh, I'm feeling sad, take an SSRI. Oh, I'm feeling anxious, take a benzo. I can't sleep, take Ambien. I need focus, take Adderall. I have pain, take oxys. I mean, it's like we were always treating the symptom, and we were never actually getting to the root cause of what was causing all of these emotions to come to the surface in the first place. So I just masked it all for years, and I was a master at it. But there's only so much pressure you can put into a pressure cooker until the top explodes off. And that's where I was at. The top had exploded. So I started to work with medicines. And I remember that first experience. I came out 6 hours later. I cried for the first time in my conscious memory. I hadn't even been able to grieve my friends that died overseas. I had lost 16 friends to suicide since I returned home. And so I was able to grieve them, and I was able to grieve all the loss and all the suffering that I had accumulated over the years. It's important to note that I was an atheist at the time. So when I came back from war, I didn't believe in anything. Definitely didn't believe in God. And it took one ceremony with mushrooms to realize that I was wrong, and that there was a deeper connection to source that I was starting to uncover, and started to work with different medicines. My second medicine I worked with was 5-MeO-DMT, which is a secretion from a toad found in the Sonoran Desert, also called the God molecule. There's some really beautiful research on this, and was life-changing for me. And that led me to further exploration with a shrub out of Africa called the Tabernathi iboga. It led me to ayahuasca. It led me to peyote cactus and Wachuma cactus. And all of these different medicines were teaching me something about myself. And we really are in the age of forgetting. And what these medicines have taught me is remembering. They allow me to remember that I have all the answers already inside of me. I just need to be aware of them. They allow me to be present. And I tell you what, I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to be unsuccessful in my suicide, and had the opportunity to take this chance on myself. And I've tried everything. I've tried every modality that you can think of during my time of, time span of 2005 to 2018. Nothing worked for me. Nothing worked. EMDR, talk therapy, pharmaceuticals. I just absolutely was resistant to those types of modalities, and I really needed a catalyst to come in there and shake things up for me. So I think I can leave it at that for now.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Well, I have so much to say.
Yes, your time to talk.
I was making mental notes, but hopefully I can remember everything. But the first thing I wanted to say was thank you for being so generous in sharing that story. I mean, I really appreciate it. And you went into more detail than you do in your video. So I really appreciate that. And thank you for being so vulnerable. I think I had originally seen you at South by Southwest present, and I think what gets me emotional then and today is just hearing the first responder story. And I just have such appreciation for people who are willing to put themselves in that place, because and of course the military too. But, when you think of somebody, they have the worst day of their life, hopefully one day of their life, but you see everybody's worst day almost on a daily basis. And to go through all of that and still be willing to get back in there and help others is truly, I don't even, there's not even words for it. It's just thank you. Thank you so much for doing that. I guess my questions would be, I have so many, but my first would be, just out of curiosity, if somebody were to ask you, like, should I go into the military? Should I be a Marine? Should I be a first responder? What would you tell them, knowing what you know now?
Yeah, that question hits home to me because I have two children. My daughter's 10 and my son is 7. And I'm my kid's hero. And my son very much wants to do what I did.
Yeah.
I don't want any of that for him. I had a long conversation with him. I took him down to Matagorda Bay, which is down at the coast, and we did some fishing for a couple days. And I was like, man, I suffered for this entire family. We already paid we paid. I've already paid the toll for you kids, and I don't want my family serving in that capacity. It's the military, the war stole my innocence. I can never get it back. I have struggled for so long. I've seen war heroes come home and lose the battle time and time again. And I've seen what that pain has done to those families, and how those children are going to always grow up wondering what they could have done different to make their dad love them. And I mean, it would have to be some desk job in like Space Force. Right. It would have to be like there was the recruiter would have to guarantee me that there was no way, 0% chance that they could ever deploy. I couldn't imagine getting that, having that black car pull up to my house and have to experience that level of loss that so many parents have had to experience. And there's what I'm teaching my children now is that there's ways to serve while also serving yourself. They're very, very curious about the work that I do. And I'm building a legacy that I hope that I can, pass on to them. And it's not the military. So although we need people, of course, we need people to fight. We need people to go to war. We need people to keep us safe. I just don't want it to be my children.
Right.
And I don't want it to be my friends' children. So same with being a first responder, man. Yeah. Same. It's the same thing. Listen, at the end of the day, if they want to do it, I'm going to support it. I'm not going to shame them for it. They're their individual self. They're sovereign, but I'm not going to be the father that said, I was a Marine, you're going to be a Marine, or I'm a firefighter, you're going to be a firefighter. I'm just not going to do that because I just don't want them to lose their innocence like I did.
Yeah.
That stuff doesn't go away to this day. I mean, and for the listeners out there, these medicines that I'm talking to today, and some of these medicines that maybe some of y'all have worked with or know of, they don't erase your memory. Those images will always be there. Those memories will always be there. It's just my nervous system doesn't have an attachment to it anymore, and it doesn't drive how I react and how I live my life. So these medicines are not going to be a cure-all. It's not going to be a panacea, but I have a lot of gratitude for those experiences, even the really crappy ones, and the ones where a lot of people suffered and loss of life was high. There were lessons in all of those experiences that made me who I am today. And part of that is why I created this organization. If I didn't have that relatability, I consider, being able to relate to people one of my superpowers. And to my kids, I'm a superhero, and that's one of my superpowers. And, this is what I'm not a guy in a lab coat. I don't have all the degrees on the wall, but I have a degree in life. I have a degree in life experience, and my EQ is really high. And I can relate to people, that person that, is needing community because he wants to die. That's who I want to talk to. That person who is addicted to pills, that person who's addicted to alcohol. That's who I want to talk to, because I want to inspire them to just be 1% better every day. And, that's all I did. And I'm, this path that I'm on, it's not the way, it's a way. It's what worked for me, and it's worked for many. And I just want to give, I want to make sure that ember inside of us can grow. And we never, once that ember, is snuffed out, we die. And I just want to encourage people to have hope that there is access, that there is light at the end of the tunnel. We just have to keep waking up and doing the hard work. So.
Well, I guess my question is, since you sounded like you tried a lot of the different entheogenic drugs, I guess you could call them
Medicines.
I've heard the term set and setting from others. Can you talk about the importance of set and setting when you're talking about these? Because I know that if done improperly, it can be dangerous, correct?
Yes. So good question. I think dose should be put in there as well. So dose, set, and setting. Those are your 3 pillars that you want to address. I can't promise anybody their safety, but we can manage risk. And so we manage risk with the best of them. And, even in my earlier days of exploration, I was by myself. I do not advocate for that. So anybody listening, do not do it by yourself. Have a friend. If you can't get to a retreat, or you can't afford a program, if you're desperate, have somebody sit there with you. They don't need to be trained, right? Just have somebody there to make sure that nothing goes wrong, right? I do not advocate for solo use of these medicines. They can absolutely be very challenging. There were times where I had to crawl to the bathroom because my legs didn't work. I was alone, and being alone can be scary. And so don't do that. Now, set. When you hear set, we're speaking of mindset. If things are blowing up in your life, don't take these medicines. If you are unstable, do not take these medicines, right? This is only going to amplify what you're currently feeling. So really want to get at a very stable place, right? To where you can be open and support growth and transformation. That's where we want to be. That's the mindset. You need to be in a growth mindset, right? So take some time, right? In our program, we have a 21-week program that we put people through. 8 weeks of that is preparation. 8 weeks of that is getting the person into the correct mindset for growth and transformation. 8 weeks. That's how important mindset is. Setting, equally important. The big reason I started this organization is because I worked with a medicine ibogaine, which some of the listeners might know of. It's starting to get a lot of attention. And it comes from the root bark of the Tabernathii iboga shrub in Africa. And it's been used for the last 30 years to treat addiction in Mexico and other countries with remarkable results. It also grows white matter in the brain. So the white part, if you ever looked at an MRI, the white is where it's the highway where all of our thought and processes go over. So it repairs and grows white matter. It's phenomenal. And I didn't want to go to Mexico for this treatment. I felt very unsafe going to Mexico, going outside of Tijuana. And so people came here to facilitate a retreat for me. And the setting was horrible. And the dose was right. I was definitely in the right mindset, but the setting was horrible. And, they had rented a house on the east side of Austin in a neighborhood which isn't productive for, a sacred space. It isn't, there was street construction outside. There was service dogs in the house barking because of the street construction. Like it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And the individuals that were facilitating this retreat for me knew what they were doing. Like they do this for a living, but they got comfortable and they got complacent. And they didn't have anybody walk the rental house. They didn't, go see if there was a place for ceremony. They didn't, so they were seeing it for the first time when I was seeing it. Mm-hmm. And I came out of that, ibogaine's 13 hours, right? And I was, you just hear a jackhammer for 10 of them. It was difficult. Now I'm also grateful for that experience. And I tell you this story to just tell you how important setting is.
Sure.
But make sure you do your research. Don't just take medicine. Don't take mushrooms at a packed concert. Mm-hmm. Make sure that you're doing this with intention. Make sure that you're around people that you trust. Make sure you're in a container that you feel safe.
Yeah.
Right. So when challenges come up, safety is not your concern, because if you feel unsafe, all of that's going to be amplified and you're going to have a very challenging experience. And this is the word bad trip. Mm-hmm. I don't believe there's bad trips. I think there's good and great. I think every experience is good, even if it's challenging. But let's just say for the context of conversation, the bad trip. People have bad trips because they didn't take the right dose, they weren't in the right mindset, or they weren't in the right setting. So I encourage you all, if you're open to this type of a modality, have those 3 pillars covered, and you'll have an incredible experience.
Yeah. Well, you've been through a lot, and your story so beautifully sets you up for helping others. Through your experience, you learned important and valuable lessons that can help ensure that, I'm sure what you do at the Illuminating Co. is because a lot of what you learned through those bad experiences. Can you tell us a little bit about what the turning point was for you to start the Illuminating Collective, and more about that your organization?
So the turning point, I just hit on it. Mm-hmm. So it was that ibogaine retreat that I went to. Yeah. I remember speaking to one of the coaches that was there on my integration day, and I'm like, wow. I was still a firefighter at the time, and I was really wanting to find my true purpose in life and do something else that promoted a healthy life for me. I was really tired of seeing people die, and it was really affecting my home life. And so I remember on my integration day, I was like, I am highly motivated to do this in a way that nobody ever has to experience what I just experienced again. And to do it with such reverence and such integrity that the team would feel honored to work for it and to be a part of it. And just to create that gold standard and to do it here in this country. Right. We were really, I was very amazed that the only access was second and third world countries.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell are we doing? I mean, we veterans who fought for freedom have to leave this country
Yeah.
to work with medicines that I'm convinced are a birthright to use in the first place, just for being born on this earth. Wait, this doesn't make sense to me. Why do we have to fly to Peru, Venezuela, Brazil, Jamaica, Mexico to go and work with these medicines that have been serving people for thousands and thousands of years? And so once I really reflected on that, I was like, okay, that's what my purpose is. And so that's what we started. My original organization was Heroic Path to Light. I started originally just for veterans and first responders, and we served a few hundred of them in our first year and a half. And most of those individuals were free to come through, and most of them were my friends. And that's really who I wanted to do this for in the beginning. Was I just didn't want to lose any more friends to suicide or addiction. And I realized that if healing was possible for me, even after everything I endured, that it could be possible for others as well. And I envisioned a future to where people didn't have to suffer in silence and, or navigate healing alone, and really build a community of people that were buying into the idea that healing happens in community and that we can really champion each other in this game of life and do this with one another and hold each other accountable. So I changed the organization's name in March of last year. And the reason I changed it is I had a lot of civilian friends, people that didn't serve, and they were absolutely struggling. And although their trauma wasn't, taking somebody's life or witnessing somebody die, trauma doesn't discriminate. And the reaction in their body of their traumatic events were the same as mine. Their nervous system was hijacked, the same as mine. Just because the method of how they were traumatized was different, it still resonated with them the same. And so I created the Illuminating Collective as our umbrella to support not only veterans and first responders with illuminating heroes, but then we also have a civilian program for non-service affiliated people, which is Illuminating Souls. And I just wanted to be able to provide access to everybody, regardless of service, right here in America.
Gosh, I know I don't know you very well, but I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you, Kristen.
I really am. I just think that the work that you're doing is so incredible. I don't know what it is that, when I hear about you guys talk, like it just strikes a chord in me that no other mission does, and I don't know what it is. I'm very empathetic to it. I'm feeling very connected to it. So I think that's why I wanted to make sure that we highlighted your story. And I'm so grateful that we found each other and that you agreed to do this podcast with me today.
Yes, thank you.
Any last things you wanted to mention before we get into our final questions about the work that you're doing with the Illuminating Collective that we haven't talked about?
Well, we are partnering with different academic universities around the country to do observational research studies with them, which I'm super excited about.
Great.
We have 3, but I can only speak of one right now, and that's with the University of Texas Dell Medical School with Greg Fonzo, who's become a really dear friend of mine, sits on our board of advisors. We're going to be looking at mescaline, which comes from cactus. And so nobody has looked at organic mescaline. They've done a study on synthesized mescaline. And my dear friend Sue Sisley out of Arizona just got approved for an organic mushroom. Nobody's ever looked at organic mushrooms, right? They have to synthesize everything because they need it exact for every person. So Sue Sisley, and just a shameless plug, is going to be doing a study on organic mushrooms. Dear friend of mine. And then I will say, I'm very excited about this. We brought on Deborah Mash out of Florida. She's been researching ibogaine since the early 90s. And so our first ibogaine retreat will be in June, which yours truly will be sitting with. We're not going to have jackhammers outside.
Do it right.
I'm very, yes, we're going to do it right. And I've created this organization, and why we have a 21-week program for people, which includes our 12-week transformational program led by our director of coaching, Jesse Torres. It's what I would have needed back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always created this, and it's like, man, if I was scared, if I felt alone, what would I have needed to promote growth and transformation and really turning pain into purpose, right? This is really where I really like to capitalize with people. Is like, suffering's a choice. Life is hard. Wanting to die, killing yourself is hard. Being an addict is hard. Being overweight's hard. Having to go to the gym every day and eating healthy is hard. Which hard you want?
Yeah.
It's all hard. It's all hard, but that's really where I really want to encourage people to solve their own problems. So I'm very excited about Ibogaine. We'll be the first organization to serve it above ground in the history of this country.
Wow.
Everything is, Ibogaine has been served in Mexico and other countries for the last, 30 years. They're now starting to look into clinical trials, which I'm super hopeful about. But 5 to 10 years? I mean, that's usually the road to being FDA approved is 5 to 10 years, $300 million. So I'm very excited to be able to serve people now and to give people access, those that are suffering from addiction, those that are suffering with traumatic brain injuries, being able to provide this medicine here on American soil. So those are some of our updates that are super exciting for us.
Yeah, that is so exciting. Okay, I really think that it's important to support the organization. Can you just speak to really quickly about what those donations do for you all? How do you guys put that money to good use?
All right, guys. Donation. This is no joke. We have served served a little over 400 people. The majority of those people cannot afford to come through programs like this. And so your donations literally save lives. It heals families. It promotes change in these relationships and creates better family dynamics, and the kids grow up different, right? And they end up being better parents because of it. It takes just a small gift. And a lot of people, a lot of you listeners today may not have served in the military, or you may not have served your communities as a first responder. By giving just the smallest amount, this is an opportunity for you to serve your country today. And I just want you to know that those donations have life-changing implications. Every single dollar, your donations go directly to veterans and first responders who would not have the resources otherwise. And so with your donation, you're giving hope. That's what you're giving. You're giving hope. And you're giving the family hope. And I have witnessed modern day miracles. We had a female who had lost her son, who was at the end of her rope, wanted to die, came through our program, couldn't afford it, had a very generous donor who funded her transformational grant. And she is thriving. She's hosting grief circles for other females with similar trauma, and she's found her purpose. So I really do encourage those today, if this resonates with you, together we can absolutely change the world, and we can redefine what mental health looks like in this country. And so every dollar counts.
Yeah. Every dollar helps create that space
Yes,
for healing. So I just want to remind everybody, the link to donate is below in the show notes. Don't forget to check that out. Before you go today, I have a few questions I ask all my guests.
Oh boy.
Reflecting on our conversation, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember about consciousness and the work that you're doing?
I would say consciousness is remembering. Remember who we are, what we're doing here, and how deeply we are connected to one another. We are always looking externally for the answers. We're scrolling social media. We're trying to read books for guidance or inspiration. I've learned through deep meditation and just sitting with my feelings and emotions that the answers are already within myself. And these medicines that I've talked about today are amplifiers of remembering who we are. And so Yeah, I think us as a collective, awakening together, we can change the world.
And if someone's just starting their journey towards a deeper understanding of consciousness, what advice would you offer them?
Trust, explore, be curious. I think really kind of look, as we are born in this world, I think being born is probably one of the biggest psychedelic experiences that we can experience, and we don't remember. Most of us don't remember being born. But you look at a small child and they're just so curious. That would be my invitation, is to just be curious, really soak in and be a sponge, and be a forever student.
Beautiful answer.
Thank you.
And my last question for you today is, in your opinion, what does it mean to you to live life consciously?
Being present. When we feel depressed, we're living in the past. When we feel anxious, we're living in the future. So really allowing yourself to be present and show up, and being able to witness all the miracles that are flashing by our eyes constantly. Just the fact that we're able to breathe oxygen, and we're living on this rock that's floating in the universe. I mean, it's, don't worry about what tomorrow's bringing. They call it the present because it's a gift. And I think living consciously is really tapping into the presence of life and how you're playing a role in it. So,
yeah, great answer. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for that wisdom.
Thanks for the hot seat.
Everybody has to do it. Justin, thank you so much for sharing your story, your incredible vulnerability today. I mean, I really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I feel like we could have done another hour.
We could have.
Yeah.
We really could have. I really don't want to let you go, but I know I have
We'll
to.
do it
but
again.
Maybe let's do it again sometime. But thank you so much for your mission and reminding us that healing is possible, even in the darkest places. And
That's right.
as we honor Mental Health Awareness Month, I invite you all to take one small action today, whether it's reaching out to someone, sharing this episode, or making a donation to support the transformative work of the Illuminating Co. And every bit of awareness, every dollar, every conversation matters. You can learn more and donate. Once again, the link is at the bottom. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss what's coming up on the next Clarity to Consciousness episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay conscious, and keep seeking clarity. Much love. Bye for now.